through watching change, through watching the very act of the mind moving, our attention shifting, we start to come to understand the nature of reality and the nature of the mind itself. The type of watching that we need to use is a silent watching. Not thinking about what we're experiencing, but silently observing what we're experiencing. This silent observing allows us to see again and again the same thing. But each time we see it, each time we experience it, we'll experience it in a different way. The understanding that comes through this practice, the insight, doesn't just come instantly again and again. It's more a development over time, like putting one drop at a time in a bucket. It can feel like the bucket isn't filling up, but gradually the water in the bucket fills till it's overflowing. When we observe continuously, our understanding of what we're observing starts to grow, starts to deepen. We get to know it very well. Let's look at a common visitor in meditation practice. Let's look at thinking. When we first sit down to meditate, the first time we start meditating, it's very hard to observe thinking. We're given the instruction, excuse me, we're given the instruction to observe the breath as it comes in and out. At some point we forget that breath and we realize, oh, I've been lost in thinking. When we first start meditating, usually we realize we've been lost in thinking when something disturbs us. So really, there's not a lot of knowledge gained there, is there? If we continue the practice, we start to notice again and again how we forget our meditation object. We start noticing again and again that point of change between being aware of each breath as it comes in and out and forgetting it. At this point, we're starting to see uncontrollable change. Through going through that experience of forgetting again and again, we become familiar with how we forget our meditation object. The first shift in wisdom, understanding that happens here, is we start to feel like we're going insane. We're trying to meditate, trying to watch the breath, and it's like, oh, I've forgotten it again. I wish this thinking would just go away. I wish this thinking will stop. We start to find that wandering off thinking is painful. And the aspect that we're finding painful isn't the thought. The aspect that we're finding painful is a lack of control over thinking. So it can often feel in the practice like our thinking is speeding up, like it's getting worse. But what's actually happening is we're starting to observe how much we actually think. As we start to find this lack of control over thinking, this forgetting painful, our relationship to thought slowly starts to change. This is the growing of wisdom. Thinking itself at this stage feels painful. Now, when we were first sat down meditating, thinking wasn't seen as being painful. Thinking was actually pleasurable. It's like, every thought that comes up is important. Every thought that comes up is real and worth thinking. But as we start to observe that uncontrollable nature of thinking, we start to notice and understand that thinking is controlling us. We aren't controlling thinking. The aspect of pain that starts to arise starts to change our relationship to thought. So you'll find at this stage you get this urge, this desire, I wish this thinking would just stop. I just want to settle down. I want to be peaceful. This is the path. This is the start of insight into thinking. This pain, the unpleasantness of forgetting, starts to drive our practice. We cultivate more mindfulness, more concentration. The mindfulness is cultivated because we're putting in the effort to catch that wandering mind. We're watching the breath. We wander off to a thought. This next stage, because we find the thinking not as enchanting as before, we find that we don't get lost in the thought for as long. A sign of this is you'll be sitting down meditating, watching the breath comes in and out, and then you forget the breath. You'll suddenly come to and realize, I've been lost thinking. That moment of remembering is a moment of cultivating mindfulness, remembering. Yeah? This is what I'm experiencing right now. At that point, to continue the understanding developing, look at what it feels like to have remembered. Look at what it feels like to no longer have that thought present. And reflect back on what it felt like to be lost in the thought. You'll find it's two complete different flavors, two complete different experiences. At this point, every time you wander off and you forget, and then you notice, I've been wandering off thinking, pay attention to the feel, the taste between being lost in the thought and being present again. As this clarifies, you'll notice how much more pleasant it is not to be lost in thinking. How much more pleasant it is to be mindful and present. Your mind will, at this stage, start to turn more towards the peacefulness of not thinking. As this happens, every time you wander off, every time you forget the breath, the period of wandering will get shorter and shorter. This noticing the shifting of attention cultivates the mindfulness. The mindfulness then causes, or the mindfulness remembering what you're experiencing continuously causes the awareness to concentrate to one point. At this point, we're developing our momentary concentration. As that momentary concentration develops, as it becomes more and more precise, more and more powerful, the speed in which we catch the wandering mind will become faster. So I have students in my classes that say to me, they say, Stephen, I was watching the breath, comes in and out, it was very clear. And suddenly I noticed that I was lost in a thought. As soon as I noticed, the thought dissolved I came back to the breath again. They noticed the very moment their attention shifted. They weren't lost for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes anymore. Just now. Bang, notice, thought dissolve, back to the breath. At this stage, the mindfulness and the concentration are becoming very strong. The momentary concentration is becoming one-pointed now, and now, and now. Very deep, very penetrating. When turned towards the thought itself, the thought dissolves. The peace of the thought no longer being present becomes more valuable to us at this stage. Yeah? Then the pain of the delusion, the pain of not knowing, of lack of clarity when we're lost in the thought. I have other students that have taken it to a higher level than this. Their concentration, their mindfulness is very accurate. They sit down to meditate and they report to me that they notice the breath coming in and out very, very clearly. And then they observe a thought coming up and they feel the pull like a vacuum cleaner sucking the attention towards it. They feel the attention being sucked towards the thought. But they don't get lost in the thought. They just observe the thought come up like a bubble, which never really forms anything. Then it vanishes. This is this progress of understanding, this progress of insight. In the final stage, they report to me that the thought comes up. They know it's there in the same way you can know that there's a sound, but their attention is in no way drawn towards that thought. They remember their meditation object. So the process that's happened here is a process of disenchantment with the thinking that's come about from observing it continuously again and again. When we first observe something, we don't know it very well. But as we continuously observe the same thing again and again and again, we start to see more detail. We start to notice patterns. And in noticing these patterns, understanding starts to arise. This very understanding allows us to see what is going on right now. But the very understanding also changes our relationship to what we are observing. So as we start to observe continuously something over time, and we get to know it very well, this understanding causes the disenchantment and the letting go of that which we have no control over. So wisdom arises through understanding what's going on. So how do we develop that wisdom? How do we cultivate it to the stage where the insight builds enough that the mind lets go of what it's clinging onto? To do this, it's not just enough just to observe, just to watch. We have to watch with a questioning mind. Put a question mark over the top of everything. Don't take it for granted. Have the attitude, what am I experiencing right now? How am I relating to this? What's going on here. Always hold that questioning, that investigation. It's the questioning, it's the investigation that's the causal factor of mindfulness to develop, which will then cultivate the concentration. And the cycle of these three factors will feed each other. So I'm just going to read a short poem to help you understand. This poem has a feeling of moment to moment watching or observation. And I heard it used in a Dharma talk many years ago. And I've always been very fond of it for giving the feeling of the development of wisdom understanding. Notice how during this poem that it's just moment to moment observation. With each line, a picture starts to form until finally by the end we have a full picture. In the same way, observing what you're experiencing right now and observing your relationship to it and applying your attention again and again, a picture will form. And the full picture gives us knowledge. This is a poem by Michael Dennis Brown. Saw a lamb being born. Saw the shepherd chase and grab a big ewe and dump her on her side. Saw him rub some stuff from a bottle on his hands. Saw him bend and reach in. Heard 2 cries from the ewe. 2 sharp, quick cries like high grunts. Saw him pull out a slack white package. Saw him lay it on the ground. Saw him kneel and take his teeth to the cord. Saw him slap the package around. Saw it not move. Saw him bend and put his mouth to it and blow. Doing this calmly, half kneeling. Saw him slap it around some more. Saw my mother watching this. Saw Angela. Saw Peter. Saw Mimi with a baby in her belly. Saw them standing in a row by the dry stone wall in the wind. Saw the package move. Saw it was stained with red and yellow. Saw the shepherd wipe red hands on the ewe's wool. Heard the other sheep in the meadow calling out. Saw the package shaking its head. Saw it try to stand. Saw it nearly succeed. Saw it have to sit and think about it a bit. Saw a new creature's first moments of thinking. Felt the chill blowing through me. Heard the shepherd say, "Good day for lambing, wind dries them out." Saw the package start to stand, get halfway, kneeling. Saw it push upward, stagger, push, and make it. Stand. Standing. Saw it surely was a lamb. A lamb, a lamb. Saw a lamb being born. So in that you get the feeling of saw this, and then this, and then this, and then this. No judgments, no likes or dislikes, no thinking about, just seeing what's happening right now. This is happening. This is happening. This is happening. But notice with that unjudgmental, silent observing, a picture starts to form. Bit by bit, as we get more information, as we see, the bigger picture starts to form. We start off just seeing the big you and the shepherd. We start to see the lamb, the family watching, dry stone wall, light breeze, sheep in the meadow calling out. We start to see this bigger picture forming. In your practice, no matter what you're observing, whatever you're experiencing right now, don't take it for granted. If you watch, if you observe silently again and again with a questioning mind, a bigger picture will start to form. As that understanding grows, right? As that understanding increases, like playing dot to dot when you're a child. When you've got that picture and it's just dots, you can't see the full picture. But as you join the lines, join all the dots, slowly a picture forms. Insight arises by looking at the same thing again and again, no matter how mundane it seems. The more we look, the more we cultivate these factors: investigation, mindfulness, concentration, the more complete the picture becomes. And as the picture develops and becomes more clear, insight arises like that, bang. And when it arises, our relationship shifts. The wisdom shifts our relationship, and we cannot observe it in the same way again. And we cannot relate to that experience in the same way again. And the development of insight and wisdom happens like this, with periods where it feels like there's no development, and then periods of, aha, I understand, drop by drop, step by step. This is what you're doing when you're doing this practice. Moment to moment observing.